morning, gentlemen, and other attendees. I'm still a little bit overwhelmed to just be here with you. This room is so full of love and so full of people that are so important to me. So many of you I've learned so much from. We already did the moment of silence to invite God, and Steve and I talked on a number of occasions trying to figure out what to do with this weekend, and he had better ideas than I do, but we're doing mine. And we tried to put something together to do together, but we weren't able to come up with it. So what I wanted to do was a page 112 meeting. I think we established last night the first three words are read this book. And I'm going to skip around and take out some of the pieces that were important to me. I'm going to talk about some of the ones I was badly confused about. I was told to read the black part and to read all of the black part. And I'm getting better. And for me, the most important, for those of you who brought your books to class, I'll be giving you page numbers. Roman numeral 22 in the forward to the third edition has what for me is the single most important sentence in the entire book. It's actually just a phrase. 2/3 of the way down the page, it says, the 12 steps that summarize the program. That's some awfully good information. According to my sponsor 39 years ago, if you take the steps off the wall, you get off the wall program. According to what we just saw here, that's a summary, that's the Cliff Notes. And if that was the whole program, we'd have a pamphlet instead of a book. So it was important for me to have fallen into the hands of someone who understood that I needed the whole thing. I needed all of the medicine. As far as the ones that I misunderstood, I want to do a couple of those. Page 3. Mick, where are you? Yeah, I'm going to call on you here in just a second. 2/3 of the way down the page. My drinking assumed more serious proportions, continuing all day and almost every night. The remonstrances of my friends terminated in what he said. Yeah, a row rhymes with now, spelled exactly the same as row, but it means a quarrel or an argument. When I read that as row, it made no sense. And of course, I just pressed on. Somebody had to tell me. Page 77. This is one of those read all of the black part things for me. It says, our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be a maximum service to God and the people about us. And I just about got a brain hernia trying to figure out how to be of maximum service to God and the people about me until somebody pointed out to me that I missed some of the black part. And it's not my job to be of maximum service. How would I do that? Fit myself to be maximum service. I know how to do that. Daily prayer and meditation, reading spiritual literature, taking meetings into jails and prisons and treatment centers, letting people in traffic, saying please and thank you, sponsoring, being sponsored, to do these things that you've taught me. Fit me to be a maximum service. I don't have to worry about doing God's job. I just need to be available to do his work. I'm told a master craftsman reaches for the best tool and the closest to his hand. My job is to be the best tool I can be and reside as close to his hand as I can. And then he uses me when he wants to. And I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Took a lot of the pressure off from me. Similar situation on page 85. It says it's easy to let up in the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. If it's easy to let up, it must require effort to not let up. It's kind of an interesting point. Rest on our laurels. Somebody will know, and I don't. It was ancient Greece, ancient Rome, where the athlete won the discus or the 100 meters, whatever it was, and laurel was a vine. They would weave it into a wreath, and he would wear it on his head as a symbol of his victory, like a gold medal. So if I'm resting on my laurels, guess where my head is? Somebody got it. Yeah. But it says we're headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol's a subtle foe. We're not cured. We really have a daily reprieve. I had to look up reprieve. It means stay of execution or delay of punishment. Daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. Clearly not contingent on my spiritual condition. I don't know what my spiritual condition is. I'm not qualified to judge it. Kenny and I were having a discussion here a few months ago. And I was saying, that's above my pay grade. I thought, wait a minute. I don't have a pay grade because I didn't get hired here. I'm a volunteer. I'm not a conscript. I was not drafted. I'm a volunteer, and volunteers don't have pay grades. But still, I'm no judge of my spiritual condition, and I don't need to be. I don't need to be. It's like spiritual growth. It's not something I do, it's something I receive. But I'm a very good judge of the maintenance of it. For me, maintenance means two things. It means to maintain in the sense of not losing something I've already got. It also means maintenance in the same sense that I maintenance my vehicle. I rotate the tires, I got the right pressure in them, I change the oil, I wash it out, I vacuum it. I maintenance my spiritual condition. Same answer as on 77. Daily prayer and meditation, reading spiritual literature, going to meetings, that whole thing that we do. And I maintenance it. And that's what, for me, what the evening half of step 11 is about, is for me to literally see what kind of job did I do on the maintenance on my spiritual condition today. I don't have to worry about what the condition is. I don't know. Before I got to recovery, how I feel was the most important thing in my life. It made all of my choices. Today, how I feel is the single least important thing in my life, because I cannot afford to allow how I feel to affect what I do. Chasing how I feel put me in detox. Chasing what I need to do keeps me with you guys. This is a better thing. So I like feeling good. I like feeling better. I don't like it when the feelings are on me that are unpleasant, but I can't let them make my choices. I just can't. I'll talk about that some more maybe later on today. Page 13. This is one of the new things that they've added recently. There are actually two things they added both on page 13. I guess about 10 lines down. The last word on the line is the word friend with a capital F. That God is a friend. This idea of a friendly God is so foreign to what I came here with. And yet it says it very clearly right there. My newfound friend, capital F. This idea of God as a friend is a wonderful, wonderful thing. But the other one they added was down at the bottom. It says, my friend promised when these things were done, I would enter upon a new relationship with my Creator. New implies that I had a relationship with God before I got here. And I would have told you that I didn't, and I did. And I'm going to tell you a story. I was driving a four-engine jet for the Air Force, and we left Christchurch, New Zealand. They've got a beer down there they call Leopard Strong. I don't know about the leopard. And I had a little touch of the hangover, and we left Christchurch and went to American Samoa and took on fuel. And we left Samoa for Honolulu, 8-hour flight plan. Nothing in between but water. Halfway across, we get into the new fuel, and it's contaminated. It's got water in it. And water isn't necessarily a problem for a jet engine. Some jet engines actually inject water on takeoff roll for additional thrust. The problem is the temperature at altitude is minus 50, and they don't call it water at that temperature. They call it ice. And it clogs the fuel lines. And jet engines about so big around do not respond well to fuel starvation. So we come down into warmer air. We haven't had one stuck up there yet, by the way. They'll come down. And no, you laugh. They really will. And so we come down in the warmer air. We can run the engines down here because it'll eat that water up. But the problem is we don't have gas to make Honolulu at this altitude. It's already closer to Guanudis to go back. A jet engine is more efficient at higher altitude. You get in trouble in fuel in a jet, you add power and climb. You'll get that climb fuel back by being at the higher altitude. So we go back up. We can't stay. Worst thing you can do for fuel mileage on an airplane is this, and that's what we're doing. Because the numbers say we're going to put a 300,000-pound jet airplane in the Pacific Ocean at 150 miles an hour today, and we're all going to die. My guess would be a large percentage of the men I'm looking at right here have had the experience of thinking they're going to die in the next moment or two. We have faced jealous husbands and looked down gun barrels and drug deals gone bad. We've had knives pulled on us. We've laid down bikes and wrecked cars and trucks. A lot of us have thought we were going to die in the next moment or two. Let me tell you something. 4 hours is a long time to think you're going to die today. That is a long time. And I promised to God, I'm pretty sure I didn't believe in if He would get me out of this one. I would quit smoking. That was first. quit smoking, quit drinking, quit visiting ladies I'm not married to. I'm going back to church. The early service. I might even build some churches. You don't leave anything in the bag on this one. And we got 10 fuel tanks and they all say 0, and the engines are still turning. And what we decided to do was to shoot what pilots call a forced landing at Hickam. If I can make high station for a forced landing, I can at least crash on dry land so our bodies can be sent home for burial. That is the conversation in that cockpit. We turned final in Honolulu at 9,000 feet. If they'd all quit then, we'd have made dry land. It wouldn't have been pretty, but we'd have made it. Landed on that runway and taxied in and shut them down. And they dipped our fuel tanks like you dip your crankcase. See how much oil you got? We did not have enough fuel left on that airplane to start 4 inches and taxi from here back to where we slept last night. We did not have that much left on that airplane. And I didn't even go to the hotel. I went straight to the bar, put my bags down either side of the bar stool. I said, Mai Tai, the big one, pack of Marlboros. Right? You get that, right? This is what I see through the eyes that you've given me. In those days when I prayed, I was trying to make him my God. I've been taught here is how to make me his man. You see, I had it upside down. I had a relationship with God. It was 911. See if you recognize any of these prayers. God, please help me pass this test I didn't study for. That one sound familiar? Try this one. Please don't let her be pregnant. The ladies tell me that one can be prayed in the first person. Please don't let those flashing red and blue lights be for me. Another popular one. Yeah. What I've discovered is God's hard to train. I don't know if you've ever tried to train God. But hey, big fella, take a knee. And that was the relationship I had before. We talked about last night that I'm not here to understand God. It says I can't. But there's an interesting thing on page 28. About halfway down the page. It says, if what we have learned and felt and seen means anything at all, it means that all of us, whatever our race, creed, or color, are the children of a living Creator with whom we may form a relationship upon simple and understandable terms, as long as we're willing and honest enough to try. I'm not going to understand God, but I can understand the relationship. And the relationship is, to me, this is a short form of step 3. He's in charge, and I'm good with it. I got here afraid of God's will. Let me try it for you another way. God's will, and if you're even thinking it. Sound familiar? Yeah, can't work with that. So I needed a God whose will was a good deal. I don't even believe that anymore. I'm convinced it's the best deal there is. One of the spiritual principles that I've learned is, and I'm trying to learn, is to not close my mind on a given piece of information. One of the great truths is I learn it, because it may look like a pinnacle when I get it, and it might be a cornerstone. I'll give you an example. Surrender. I surrendered a lot when I was new. I haven't surrendered in quite a while. This morning when I woke up, I did not surrender. I volunteered. In my own enlightened self-interest, I volunteered. I'm convinced to the depths of my soul that God's will is the very best deal there is. And I've asked for that this morning as a volunteer. Not after surrender. There was no fight. But if I close my mind on surrender, you can't build on that. But if I hold surrender in an open mind, I can go to volunteer. I can't close my mind on volunteer because there are levels above that. And some of my mentors are there, and I know that. And those levels are things like I get used and I don't want to take the credit for it. I'm intermittently at that one, not very often. I get used to touch another life, and I don't take the credit for it. I don't have that one. I get used so much that being used as a tool in God's hand to touch other lives is a natural part of my life, like having that first cup of coffee in the morning. It's just one of the things that happens. Not that it becomes commonplace, but it becomes comfortable and natural. And I'm not terribly aware of it. I know people that are at that level. But if I close my mind and surrender, I don't get to any of those others. So the idea is, when I came to you in the summer of 1984, one of my problems was what I didn't know. That's absolutely a problem. Biggest problem was the things I knew for sure that were actually incorrect. And today I do my very best to be open. I think that's what open-minded means. It's what humility means. It's the willingness to be taught. To take something that looked to me like a pinnacle when I got it and be able to build on it by not closing my mind on it. Page 456. I was in one of the gated communities. That's a state prison, for those of you who don't know. And they had books. And I'll tell you what, you want to have some fun in a state prison where they got books? Go in there and do a page 112 meeting. Go in there and have a seat and listen to what they're going to dig out, the nuggets they will dig out for you. One of them did this at the bottom of 456. AA has accomplished so many things in my life today. It has given me my sanity and all-around sense of balance. Now, willing to listen and take suggestions, I have found the process of discovering who I really am begins with knowing who I really don't want to be. To me, that's what the first 9 steps are about me finding out who I don't want to be. It was pointed out to me, if I would think about the 2 worst things I ever did, the fact that I think of them as worst things is a clear indication that that's not who I am. That's who I'm not. Because if that's who I am, I don't think badly about them. So that must be who I'm not. I was told what they would teach me here is to stop doing who I'm not, how to repair the damage for having already done who I'm not. And who I really am will emerge from the ashes like the phoenix, and that ain't poetry. That's what we do here every day. That's nuts and bolts here. That's what we do. That's what this whole thing was about for me. Page 60. This is one that was a long time coming for me. The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. On that basis, almost always in collision with something or somebody, even their motives are good. Collision, blam, bent metal, broken glass, blood, screaming. That's collision. That's different from like mildly disconcerted on rare occasion. And where this lesson came from me, I was a commission salesman, multi-line rep, commission salesman. And the purchasing agent in my category at my largest customer was a personal friend. We're guests in each other's homes. We play in golf together. Our wives are friends. And I get a phone call from him one day. And he says, my wife just gave birth. And I'm close enough to the family to know that this is not good news. We're 2 months early. And he said, we're at Vanderbilt Hospital and it ain't going good. Would you come down here and pray with this child? I said, absolutely. And I hop in my car. I'm driving to Vanderbilt Hospital, doing what I've been hearing, checking my motives. And I can't answer the question. Am I going to the hospital to pray with this child, to bring spiritual relief to this family? Or am I going there to pray with this child to look good to this guy so he'll put some more money in my pocket? And I can't answer the question. And I pull into the parking place, and I think I can show you which one. And he knows where I live, by the way. He's been a guest in my home in the last month. It's less than 15 minutes from Vanderbilt. I got no time. Pull into the parking place, and I go to the source, and I said, I think I need an answer, and I think I need one right now. And I've heard other people fail to describe what I'm about to fail to describe. What happened to me was not a voice. I did not hear his voice like I talked about last night. But the next thing I got was a thought, but it was different from any other thought I'd ever had. It was stronger, it was bold print, it was big font, it had a ring to it, it was different. And the thought was, does going into a hospital to pray for a sick child violate any of your principles? And the answer was no. Then go ahead and do it, because there are no wrong reasons for doing the right thing. And that was where I got it, what this thing said on page 60. What it says in effect is, I can't trust my motives. One of the ways I play God is by having a good motive. Motive governs outcome irrespective of action. Motive says, I know how this should come out, so I can do anything I have to do to make it come out that way. That's what motive says. Principle says, I'm going to do what God wants me to do, and he'll handle the result. So principle governs action irrespective of outcome. Motive governs outcome irrespective of action. And I said it last night. I believe good motive may be the most evil thing that's ever come to planet Earth. If the road to hell is paved with good intentions, the guardrails are made out of good motives. I'll give you a couple of examples. A current one. There's a guy in Moscow, Russia today that believes he's got a good motive for starting a war and killing thousands of people and destroying a bunch of lives because he believes he has a good motive. I'm told Al Capone was asked by a newspaper man one time why he was involved in those illegal activities. And he said, I was just trying to get people the things they wanted. Capone had a good motive. There was a guy in Germany in the 1930s and 40s that had a motive of purifying the race, and Adolf Hitler killed millions of people. Good motive. I'm not against having good motive, but I can't trust it. Principle always trumps motive. Cliff Roach, if you don't know that name, your education is short, please get a hold. The Cliffers said, the 12 traditions are a set of principles designed to protect AA from my very best motives. That's exactly what our principles do, is they protect us from our motives. Good to have good motives, I'm not against it, but it's not the acid test. The acid test is it within the principles? And that's the thing I ask myself when I talk to the guys I sponsor. It's what he's about to do inbound spiritually within the principles. I don't care what his motive is. I can come up with a good motive. I can hide a bad motive under a good one and fool myself. I am fully capable of that. And that has brought me a tremendous amount of peace to learn the difference there. Because anyway, it's an easy thing for a guy like me to get wrapped around the axle on. On page 62, it says, selfishness, self-centeredness, we think that is the root of our troubles, driven by 100 forms of driven, not mildly bothered on rare occasion, driven by fear, the deep concern I may not get my will at some time in the future, self-delusion, believing my own BS, self-seeking, wide open after my will, not thinking about you at all, self-pity, poor me, I did get my will in the past, poor me, I'm not getting my will right now, poor me, I might not get my will at some time in the future, pour me a drink. Step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. That's so clear, this stuff's all about my will. My sponsor, this is 39 years ago, says to me, how'd you like some good news? I like that a lot. He said, I'm going to give you the best news you've ever had in your whole life. I said, hit me, but baby, I'm open. He said, so our troubles we think are basically our own making. Was that it? That was it. I don't get it. He said, if it really is, the cops, the courts, the judges, the Russians, the Chinese, your future ex-wife, her mother, and their lawyer, if those people really are the problem, you lose. The good news is that you, sir, are the problem. If you'll bring some willingness to this party, we can work on that. It didn't seem like it at the time. But this moment I become the problem, there's hope. If they have to move a quarter of an inch, I'm cooked. Absolutely cooked. The book tends to be a little bit redundant. I think Bill knew his audience, or whoever wrote this knew their audience pretty well. Page 53. When we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis. Self-imposed crisis. I'm the problem. 103. After all, our problems of our own making. 133. We're sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. We cannot subscribe belief that life is a veil of tears, though it was once just that for many of us. It is clear that we made our own misery. 4 times they tell me I'm the problem. Maybe I better embrace that. Not a bad idea. Page 164. This is an observation from me. There are 2 fellowships that are referenced in this book. The fellowship of AA that you're in, when you say you're in it, nobody will say you're not. There's a second fellowship mentioned on page 164. It says, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit. The fellowship of the Spirit has different entrance requirements from the fellowship of AA. They look to me like the steps in narrative form. My experience has been, I've seen a number of people who were members of the fellowship of AA go back out. I have never seen anyone who is a member of the fellowship of the Spirit go back out. I've sponsored two men in particular that I know for a fact did what's in this book, because I took them through it. I know they did it. Two who went back out. One of them married his new higher power, and she didn't like how much time he spent with us. We used to say, I wonder how she likes him now. That news was in the legal notices in the newspaper not real long after that, when she divorced his ignorant butt. And he's back now, sober how long, Darren? 15 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he's famous for it, by the way. And the other one who's not here is a hotel manager, and they got a job running a dude ranch in Arizona, 40 miles from the nearest meeting, and quit going. And 2 years later, he drank for 2 weeks. Today, he's sober over 20 years. So only two people I know for sure did what's in this book that went back out. I've been watching this a long time. This ain't some get it and some don't. This is some do it and some don't. Been my experience. But the way I like to say it on this is what they did was they allowed their membership in the fellowship of the Spirit to lapse. And when that membership lapsed, they relapsed. When they re-upped their membership in the fellowship of the Spirit, they got back and doing just fine. Well, I couldn't help it. Page 45. I've been told by people who I think may have asked the question, Bill was asked on a number of occasions the difference between shortcomings and character defects, and he said, I just didn't want to use the same words over again. Here we are on page 45, where he's going to use the same single word 6 times in 9 lines. Starting 5 or 6 lines down, the needed power wasn't there. Our human resources, marshaled by the will, were not sufficient. They failed utterly, lack of power. That was our dilemma. Had to find a power by which we could live, and had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. Where in here we had to find that power. It's exactly what the book's about. Its main object, enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. My problem was not lack of information. It was not lack of motivation. It was not lack of education. My problem was lack of power. Quitting drinking is not hard to do. I've done it over 2,000 times. It's how do I not start again? Or even better than that, how would I not want to start again, which is what this whole thing is about. And it's about accessing that power. It's interesting, that last line I just read, that last sentence, can be read either of 2 ways, I think. It said its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. It's either the finding of the power solves my problem, or I find the power and the power solves my problem. I do not solve my problem. I am my problem. Page 84. Love and tolerance of others is our code. Earl Hightower led this for us a number of years ago, and he pointed out that for the earthlings, it's just love. For us, love and tolerance. And there was a guy in my original home group, and I always refer to him as Edward, because that's what he said his name was. And everything he did rubbed my fur the wrong way. I didn't like the way the man drank his coffee. Just, gah. And I was sitting there one time in a meeting hating Edward, and it occurred, and I heard in the back of my mind, I heard my sponsor's voice say, if you spot it, you got it. And so I looked, and what Edward was doing, he was not chairing the meeting, he was moderating. He was talking after everybody, had a little comment about what they said. And I thought, holy mackerel, I've done that. Not since. Not once since then have I done that. So I started watching Edward, and every time he did something that bothered me, I searched myself and found it. And Edward became one of my greatest teachers. He had all of my character defects. Now, to be completely honest with you, he had them a lot worse than I. I learned so much from him. And I think if I have to tolerate somebody, I better take a look. They just may have a lesson for me. Edward had a bunch of them. I hope he's okay. I hope he's okay. Continuing above that, continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. What an interesting list. It sounds vaguely familiar. I think we may have seen that list on page 67, just above the center. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? If we turn over to the top of 86, where we're resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid, that's starting to sound familiar. What do those things have in common? Resentment is I'm angry because I didn't get my will at some time in the past. Selfish, I'm wide open after my will. I'm not thinking about you at all. Dishonest, I don't want to, but I will lie, cheat, steal to get my will. Afraid, fear is the deep concern I may not get my will at some time in the future. For me, the common denominator is self-will. That's what these things all are. They're the indicators of self-will back in the foreground. And it says, I'm back on 84 now, when, not if, these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. There's a prayer. Discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we've harmed anyone. And we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. There's that prescription again. Whatever's going on in my life, the answer for me is to help you. It makes no sense at all. And it does, by the way, work every time. Page 60. Wait a minute, that's going to be 61. 2/3 of the way down the page, you see the word, is he not, 2 lines in a row. It's the second one. Is he not a victim of the delusion that he can rest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if he only manages well? Let me translate that into Tennessee English. What that says is, I'm so crazy, I think if I can get what I want, it will make me happy. I have failed to notice the tens of thousands of times I got what I wanted was not rendered happy. It didn't work. Maybe we need more of what doesn't work. Maybe not. Page 8. A little bit past halfway down the page. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll do the paragraph. Trembling, I stepped from the hospital a broken man. Fear sobered me for a bit. And came the insidious insanity of that first drink, and on Armistice Day, 1934, I was off again. Everyone became resigned to the certainty that I would have to be shut up somewhere or would stumble along to a miserable end. How dark it is before the dawn. In reality, that was the beginning of my last debauch. I was soon to be catapulted in what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. Einstein said the 4 dimensions were width, depth, height, and time, with the time being the 4th dimension. And the time I get catapulted into is right here, right now. A place, as an alcoholic, I rarely visit. My mind is off in the past, reliving victories, some of which may have actually happened. Or I'm off in the future trying to figure it all out. Plan A and Plan B and Plan C, and what if this, and what if they find out, and this, and I'm never between the claps, right here, right now. And that's where the action is. There's one that has all power, one is God, and you find him now. Notice that when I find God, it's where? My God is a God of right here, right now. That's where I need to be. My feet, which are very, very nattily clothed today, you might notice that the socks do match the bow tie. My feet are smarter than my head. My feet never go into the past, and they've never been in the future. My head can learn a lot from my feet. But Bill goes on to describe the 4th dimension in his own language. He says, I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that's incredibly more wonderful as time passes. Happiness, I get that. Aristotle said what everyone wants is to be happy. I buy that. I want that for myself, you bet. Peace, yes, I want that for myself too. I want to be calm in here and comfortable, peaceful. Usefulness, what is usefulness doing on that list? That's for them. No, it isn't. It's for me. I cannot find a direct route into happiness and peace. Those two are side effects of being useful. That's where they come from. Page 84. 3 lines down. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. What are uselessness and self-pity doing? How did they get together? My experience, I talked about it last night through the cancer, was the way I got out of self-pity was by being useful, by picking up the phone and calling you and saying, how can I be of service? It works. It just works. Page 15. My wife and I abandoned ourselves with enthusiasm to the idea of helping other alcoholics to a solution to their problem. It was fortunate. My old business associates remained skeptical for a year and a half, during which I found little work. I was not too well at the time, and I was plagued. Listen to the power in the words. Plagued When's the last time you heard that word used as a verb? Plagued by waves of the two great killers of alcoholics, self-pity and resentment. This sometimes nearly drove me back to drink. I soon found that when all other measures failed, work with another alcoholic would save the day. Many times I've gone to my old hospital in despair. I looked it up. Despair means without hope. I got to go down through depression to get to despair. On talking to a man there, I'd be amazingly lifted up and set on my feet. It is designed for living. It works in rough going. That was my experience with it. Page 159. Not too long ago, working with a sponsee who had a sponsee who was unwilling to start sponsoring. And I said, one of the problems is that this sponsee, you've had all the answers for him, and he doesn't think he has all the answers to the next new guy. And I think it's important for him to know that it's okay if he doesn't. Page 159, they're going to talk about three individuals. Bill Dotson, who I'm sure you know is AA number 3, Dr. Bob, and Ernie Galbraith, who is AA number 4. Single sentence near the bottom of the page. A year and 6 months later, these three had succeeded with 7 more. Those 3 guys, with access to a hospital full of drunks, in a year and a half, succeeded with 7. How many missed? How many missed? Don't worry about it. These are Scott's, forgive me, this is just me, Scott's 2 rules of sponsorship. Rule 1, if they're ready, you can't do it wrong. If they're not ready, you can't do it right. It ain't up to you. Rule 2, don't take credit for the ones that make it, because if you do, you get to blame for the ones that don't, and some of them are going to die. Yeah, and that just makes it real simple. And I think they're the 3 most important things I can say to the men that I sponsor. The 3 very most important things I can say are, 1, I love you. God is love. When I give love, I give God. It is the highest gift. 2, I'm proud of you. I'm on a constant search for ways to say to them, I'm proud of you. You did so well. My favorite one, my just absolute favorite, is when my new guy calls me on a Sunday and he says, I told you I went to 7 meetings last week and only went to 6. I lied to you. I knew he was going to lie to me the day before I met him. He's an alcoholic. That's what they do. He didn't hurt me. And I say, I'm so excited for you. Look how much you have grown. You used to lie for credit when you could have got cash for the truth. And here you are over 1 meeting. And you have grown so much spiritually that that's eaten on you to the point where you have to tell me, I am so proud of you. 2 things happen there. One is that's true. The second one is never again will he think, well, there's no reason to call Scott. I know what he's going to say because he didn't know I was going to say that. I've got a reputation as a hard-nosed sponsor, and I'm not, as long as I'm getting my way. I'm not. But I think it's really important to lift their spirits whenever I get the chance. I want to chase a concept through the book. It's what I call it, chasing a concept through the book. Page 16. Middle. There is, however, a vast amount of fun about it all. Page 132, in the dead center of the page, be 17 lines from the top and bottom, 2 words in from both margins. We absolutely insist on enjoying life. At the bottom of the page, we think cheerfulness and laughter make for usefulness. Page 133, we're assured God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. By the way, for me, I had to get free first, which is what the step work did. If I get free, happy and joyous fall out of the sky on me. Page 151, geez, I always love that number. You didn't have to wait for that stuff. That'd take you downtown right now. You did not have to wait for that. Now and then a serious drinker being drawn to a moment says, I don't miss it all, feel better, work better, having a better time. I think I'll join the gym. I ad-libbed that part about the gym. As that problem drinkers, we smile at such a sad when our friends like a boy whistling in the dark to keep up his spirits, he fools himself. Inwardly, he would give anything to take a half a dozen drinks and get away with them. I like to do this thing in treatment centers. This is so important. I don't have the slightest interest in being a social drinker. It makes no sense to me. a drink with the boys on the way home from work, a beer while I watch the ball game or mow the grass. I don't get it. I don't get it. I used to do some life coach stuff on the side, and I worked with a doctor and got his book edited and published. And as part of his thank you is he took me to a Three Forker. You guys not from Tennessee, a Three Forker is a nice restaurant with a tablecloth, and I get 3 forks. And I don't normally dine, I just eat. But anyway, I'm on best behavior. And the server introduces himself, and I order a Diet Coke. The doctor orders a Bacardi and Coke, and I don't say to him, you're obviously an amateur drinker. Professional would never pour a Call brand into a soft drink. You can't taste the difference. You're going to need those extra few dollars later in this drunk, but I'm on best behavior. I don't say anything. We have a very nice meal, and 45 minutes, an hour later, and the server brings the check. The doctor already drank a third of his drink. He's already pounded down a third of it. And the ice is melted, and this thing has separated. It is this ugly brown rainbow. And I say to him, aren't you going to finish your drink? I didn't say it that way. I wanted to. Aren't you going to finish your drink? No, I had all I wanted. Really? How would you like? I don't want to be able to do that. I do not know what a Call brand costs at a Three Forker. I know it's a serious number. And he just, no, I don't want to be able to do that. But it says here on 152, he fools himself. In order, he would give anything to take a half a dozen drinks to get away with them. A half a dozen, the way I pour, no consequences. Now that makes sense to me. But I don't have the faintest interest in being a social drinker. And then this is the piece I want to get to. It says he will presently try the old game again. This may be the most important sentence in the book for a newcomer. For he's unhappy about his sobriety. Wait a minute. Does that mean that I'm going to have to find a way to be sober and happy at the same time? That's possible? See, I didn't know that. I had not had that in a very long time. That's precisely what this is about. Because if I can't find a way to be comfortable in my own skin, I can't stay. I can't stay. Alcohol was a lubricant of life. It made my skin fit. I got to have something else that makes it fit. And the spiritual awakening is what made it fit for me. I take another one here just for fun. 568. I got a couple of minutes, so you can just suffer. There's a principle which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is contempt prior to investigation. We find the same concept on page 143 in very different language. If your man accepts your offers, we point out that physical treatment's but a small part of the picture. We're providing him with the best possible medical attention. He should understand that he must undergo a change of heart. This must change. Do you ever drink it will require? I've always wondered if that was important. Require a transformation that's a total change of thought and attitude. Said the same thing. Page 58, in the most read, least listened to portion of our literature, 4 lines from the bottom, some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas. Page 53, I had to look up the word fetter. I was not familiar with it. It means to restrict. Dead center. I'm sorry, 53 is the wrong page. 50, I've confused myself. Boy, that's not hard to do anymore. 51, in the realm of this material, men's minds were fettered by superstition, tradition, and all sorts of fixed ideas. Same concept. Page 42, about 8 lines from the bottom. But the program of action, though entirely sensible, was pretty drastic. It meant I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out of the window. 1 is 1, 2 is a couple, several's more than 2. Lifelong conceptions, things I believed all my life, out the window. Page 27, Carl Jung, arguably the greatest psychologist of all time, is telling Roland Hazard he ain't got a snowball's chance unless one thing can happen. Dead center of the page. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men, are suddenly cast to one side. Completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. Guiding forces cast to one side. Page 1. I finally found an easy way to do this. When you get to page 1, Just flip 2 more pages toward the front of the book. Just trust me, turn 2. We don't have to learn the Roman numerals. The right-hand page is XXIX. First full paragraph begins with "on the other hand." Count up 3 lines. It says, this is repeated over and over. Unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of his recovery. Entire is more than half. An entire psychic change. This part's a psychic. All of those things say the same thing. In Tennessee English, what they say is, some of what I know for sure ain't so. And what I've got to do is release my grip on the things that I think I know for sure. It's the only hope a guy like me has got, is to just open up to them. Page 20. Our very lives as ex-problem drinkers depend upon our comments and thought of others and how we might help meet their needs. What this thing continues to be about. Page 25, this one to me is kind of interesting. The great fact is just this and nothing less. We've had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude toward our fellows, toward God's universe. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way that's indeed miraculous, or He's entered into our hearts and lives in a way that's indeed miraculous. You can read either way. I think they're both right. They are for me. I'm sorry that you guys were not in my room at 4 o'clock this morning to hear the talk I did then. It was a great one. It really was. Page 75, 76, has steps 6 and 7. And rather than read those, I'm going to tell you my experience with them the first time. I'd had that big white light experience I told you about, and I'd gone through what this treatment center called the first 4 steps. And I did my 5th step with Bernie. And I'd been home a week or 2. I'm still unsponsored. And I was lying in bed one night. I met God lying on my back in a bed, so I talked to Him that way a lot. I'm comfortable there. Howard used to say, wherever you met God, go there again. And that's what I do. And I was lying there. My first wife was asleep next to me. I was just talking to Him. And it was like I was immersed in His love. It surrounded me over and under, like I was floating in it. And it was I guess, except for that white light experience, it was the most powerful spiritual experience I'd ever had. Just lying there in the Master's presence, basking in His goodness and love. There just aren't words. But I'm laying there with Him, just talking, like I'm talking to you. And I said to Him, please, give me the hardest training I can stand so that you can make the most out of me that you can, so I can be the best guy I can be for you. I meant that. And to me, that's step 6 and 7. It's really what that is. I will tell you the truth. I've had times I wish I had not said that. He went kind of all in on that. And some of the training has been tough. But boy, it's been worthwhile. Because what happened is I finally eventually became okay with me. I became somebody I like. I never had that when I got here. I'd been an actor all my life, trying to be the guy I thought you want me to be. And it never worked. It never worked. So I had to try to become real, and I didn't know how. And it's a little piece at a time. It's 2 forward and 1 back, and it's okay that it goes that way. It's just okay. Page 4, 5, 7, and I'm going to quit here in just a second. I think they gave me too much time. You must know that. Last paragraph. This is also in that same gated community. From experience, I realized I cannot go back and make a brand new start, but through AA, I can start from now and make a brand new end. I'm going to close with a story, and this has been confirmed to me by someone who did this as real. There was a particular Frenchman who was a skydiver. His great passion was free fall, the tumbling and acrobatics you can do in free fall. And he did it many, many times. And he went up one particular day as an instructor, and as they approached the drop zone at about 10,000 feet, he's doing final checks on his novices. as a good instructor would. They hit some turbulence and he was thrown out. The door's already off the plane. And he'd violated one of the rules. That's the one. He's out at 10 grand with no chute. And I would propose that he was faced with a question. Two choices, really. One is to be terrified of the future, to place a bunch of blame and have a bunch of negative emotion and resentment, or to do the thing he loved the most for the rest of his life. And they watched him as he fell, and he tumbled, and he dived, and he did the acrobatics you can do in free fall. He made his choice. I would propose that all of us, we fell out of the plane the moment we were born. Unlike the skydiver, we don't have as good an idea when it'll be over. We face the exact same set of choices. To be terrified of the future, to have a bunch of resentment and negative attitude, to place a bunch of blame, or to do the thing we love the most the rest of our life. It was necessary for me to go through these 12 steps to get the poison dug out of my soul so I could be comfortable with me, to find out who I really am. And when I found out, it's what I like to do the most. And what it is hang out with people in recovery. Is to be with you guys. You're the most fascinating people in the world. And I love you with all my heart. Thank you.